All right. I think we'll go ahead and get things started. Katie, are you ready to go?
Let's rock and roll.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us to another edition of Shy Hack Night Remote. We're excited you can be here. Hope you're doing okay. And we're excited for tonight's presentation. We think it's really timely and look forward to learning more about a really relevant topic. So I'm Cameron. I'm a board member here at Shy Hack Night, along with our other co-host, who I'll let introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm the secretary of the board here. We're both on the board, Cameron and I, and we're excited to be able to co-host you for tonight's presentation.
Yeah, and in just a few moments, we'll go over a few housekeeping details, and then in a few minutes, we'll turn it over to our featured speaker. But first, just a reminder, as you can see on screen, in the bottom of the screen, we have a Slack channel. This is where some of our communications go on. It should be familiar for folks who've joined us before, but if you're new, feel free to join us on Slack. We like to do a kind of classic introduction at Shy Hack Night, which is 3-word introductions. There's also socializing there, but Katie and I are going to demonstrate our 3-word introductions here to get us started. And if you'd like to communicate with some of the other folks here at Shy Hack Night, you can do so through our channel. But as far as introductions go, we like to say our name, preferred pronouns, and then 3 words that describe yourself. So I'll start out here. My name is Cameron So. He, him, and learning about learning.
I'm Katie O'Shea. She, her, hers. T-shirts every day.
All right. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, you can do so on our Slack channel, which you can find the details again on the screen. We will now go into a few announcements, and want to remind folks that if you have announcements you'd like to share, you can let us know in our Slack channel, and we'd be happy to share them out with the broader Shy Hack Night community. So our first announcement is that tonight we have a member meeting. So Shy Hack Night is a member-driven organization. We have a large community, not every one of which is members, but we're excited that we have a core group of members, and we'll be meeting tonight. So we'll be sharing some updates about Shy Hack Night, as well as looking ahead and then seeking feedback. So we hope it's a good venue to reconvene digitally and get to see some folks that we haven't seen in a little bit. So please join us for our member meeting. You can find details in our Slack channel.
Cool. All right. Next announcement. Big news. Next week is episode 400 Shy Hack Night. It's crazy to think that it's finally here. That's 8 years of Shy Hack Night, of people meeting together to talk about civic tech and learn. And we're so excited. So we want to celebrate it by hearing from all of you. So if you want to record a really quick video, under 30 seconds, where you talk about how Shy Hack Night has impacted you, maybe you made a really significant friendship or found a job or learned about something totally new and different that you never thought that you would learn about before, then we'd love to hear about it. So if you want to record it on YouTube or Instagram or Vimeo or something else, if you want to tell us what that something else is and submit your video, you can do it at the link that is listed here, bit.ly/CHN-400.
All right, thanks, Katie. The next announcement is that we have a new tech and data help desk led by Derek Eder, familiar face for folks who've been to Shy Hack Night before. We're offering pro bono tech assistance to nonprofits, government, and small businesses, as well as individuals upon request. So there are a few really general criteria that you can refer to in the link pictured, but if you have some simple tech requests that would be helpful to either troubleshoot or have some guidance or other support, you can do so following these links. We hope that we can be a resource to folks who are trying to troubleshoot, as we're having to rely a lot on new technologies, and that's not always easy. So if that's something that would be helpful, please check out the link pictured. What's next, Katie?
Cool. Next is the census, which is super important. It's really key that the government knows roughly how many people live in a certain space so that they know how to allocate resources. And to make sure that everyone is counted, everyone has to fill out the census. So it's really easy, I promise. I did it in a shockingly little amount of time, and I was surprised by how little information was actually needed. So fill it out. It's so easy. Do it between the presentation and breakout groups, whatever you need to do, just fill it out. But now we want to hear any announcements that you might have, so you can share those in our Slack thread. And I will open up the thread right now so that everyone can post it in one thread. But yeah, if you have an event or an announcement of some other type or a job posting, that's the place where you can do it. And
all right. Katie, are we seeing any additional announcements in the thread, or should I go ahead and move on to the next thing?
I'd say let's keep it moving. Only just posted now, so we'll keep it moving for now. And then, yeah, everybody knows where to check it out if they have something.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're excited tonight for a conversation about barriers to digital equity. And a reminder, we'll be answering questions after the initial presentation in our YouTube chat. So please feel free to submit questions as we go. We'll refer to the chat and share them with our speaker, who at this time I'm happy to introduce, Angela Seifer, who I'll turn it over to. Thanks and welcome, Angela.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm in Columbus, Ohio, so excited to be with you all tonight. I don't have slides because the work that I've been doing keeps changing. And so the old slides I had don't make sense. And if I made some this week, they wouldn't be relevant next week. So I decided to just skip slides altogether until we get through the crisis. The issue of digital inclusion, which is the definition for digital inclusion, are the activities that get us to digital equity. So let's start with digital equity. Digital equity is individuals and communities having access to the information communication technologies that they need. Digital inclusion is what gets us there. So digital equity is the goal. Digital inclusion are the activities that are affordable home broadband. I used to say public. In fact, still the definition is public access broadband, but really nobody wants public access broadband right now, right? You want it in your home. This is why the slides are out of date. Devices. So everybody needs the right device. A mobile phone doesn't always cut it. It doesn't meet your needs. And then the tech support. So we used to focus more on digital literacy, which digital literacy is still really important. But at this current moment in time, it turns out to be more of tech support. And then you can get to the digital literacy, because if you don't have the tech support, you cannot go to the library for support. You cannot go to the local nonprofit. You can't go to school. Nobody can help you in person. So having that support that's via phone to a point at which you're comfortable enough to be able to get the support online, that's what gets us to digital literacy. NDIA is a 501c3 nonprofit. We got started about 5 years ago because there wasn't an entity representing nationally representing local programs. So local programs that provided access to the internet, that helped folks sign up for internet in their homes, that was making sure they had devices, and that was teaching digital literacy classes. So that's why we created NDIA. And so what we've ended up doing now today is that we help those folks talk to each other, but then at the same time, NDIA and the whole community, we learn from each other, and then that influences policy that we try to change. And some successes in that, a lot more work to be done. The barriers to digital equity tend to be, or we know are, affordable home broadband, the right and the the affordability of the broadband is very much connected to the digital literacy, because if you aren't sure how to use it and it's expensive, why would you pay for it? So the term broadband adoption is often used, and that has to do with subscribing to the internet. So those are two of the common barriers. And then the idea of the devices, right? That the mobile phone is not the right device. In our current environment, I'm not in conversations anymore where I have to explain to people why the internet's important. I used to do that quite a bit, actually. It used to drive me bonkers. Really? Y'all don't think everybody should have access to the internet, right? It was like I started to become like this chip on my shoulder. It was not a good scene. And so now I don't find myself in that anymore, except the media. For some reason, they still want me to explain it to them, even though they know the answer. So where we're at now, though, is that folks want to talk about solutions. So why, how do we get there? So if we understand the barriers, can we understand how we get more folks to have access to the internet? And what we're seeing right now are the short-term, quick, people need internet fast, like we're seeing that kind of a solution. But then we're also seeing the discussions of, okay, we actually have to solve this long-term. Can you imagine all the children in particular who were given devices to take home to do schoolwork, and then we're going to be like, okay, honey, I need you to give me that computer back. That's just the worst, right? So we have to figure out the long-term solutions. The schools in particular, we've seen some of them distributing laptops, we've seen them distributing maybe tablets and hotspots. Hotspots are a quick solution because they're easy, they're very user-friendly. You hand it to someone, they press a button, it starts up, they can connect to it without a problem. But they're very expensive. So this is where we have to think about short term. Okay, that made sense in the short term, but we have to now work on the long term, which is more about the wireline, right? So this is what do you have in your home? Tends to be wireline, could be wireless, but it's that consistent service that doesn't have a data cap attached to it. In the United States, the work that is done on the ground tends to be done by community-based organizations, local governments. They were kind of the surprise to all of this work for NDIA, housing authorities and libraries. And then nationally, we are seeing this increased interest. And so there's actually discussions in the federal government of a broadband subsidy. The discussion currently is that it would be an emergency broadband subsidy, not long-term, but if we can get the emergency broadband subsidy, we can get to more of a long-term discussion. There's discussion of digital equity funding. There was a Digital Equity Act proposed in both the House and the Senate pre-COVID. And so that is being discussed again. That would provide funding to these folks on the ground doing the digital inclusion work, but it also would require states to create a digital equity plan. No states currently have a digital equity plan, in case you're curious. So it would help move that along. Although I think the encouragement of them of asking them to do that doesn't seem as far-fetched now in the current environment as it maybe did pre-COVID. So I could go 100 different ways with this. So can we open it up to some questions and see what folks would like to talk about?
Yeah, so thank you for providing an overview and setting the stage for us. For those who are joining by YouTube, please feel free to submit questions through our chat, and we'll be looking for those as we go along. But I'll start with a few questions to get us started. One of the points that you touched on was the balance between short and long-term thinking. So I'm wondering if you anticipate that there is more perhaps appetite for thinking about long-term solutions as we're looking at what happens if we don't think long-term about these. So could you speak a little bit about how the landscape may have changed with regards to what do we do not just now in the emergency, but looking ahead?
Yeah, there are a lot more communities now talking about how do we build our own network? Like that's the question coming up now, like, so if our existing infrastructure is too expensive for a lot of our neighbors, how do we solve that? Can we build it ourselves? Like that's the conversation that's happening. There are also more in the mid-range between quick, get everybody a hotspot and let's build our own network is the mid-range. What if we built networks in just the poor neighborhoods? Might we then be able to make sure they have access? So that's also a very real conversation. Also long-term is discussions about how do we make sure people have the tech support that they need? Because that's not going away either. I mean, it was always kind of a pain in the rear, right? To go to the library if that was your only access. So can we solve this so that it's not that inequity that we had before?
Awesome. We'll be looking in the chat for additional questions, but I also wanted to touch on the policy proposals. You mentioned a few specific and then a few more general policies. And you also talked about having to explain previously that the internet is important for people. I'm wondering as policy recommendations move forward, what challenges do you face in communicating these policies? Is it the case that municipal governments understand the technologies that might be involved or the options, or is there a lot of groundwork to explain the overall context? Can you talk a little bit about what those conversations look like from the policy side of things?
There's an assumption that the lack of internet is only a rural problem. That's the first thing that we start with. One of the things this crisis has done, though, is made it abundantly clear that the lack of internet is not just a rural problem. It is also an urban and suburban problem, and that it is very much connected to poverty. The lower one's household, the less likely that household is to have internet in their home. There's also an assumption that if you own a mobile phone, that mobile phone has internet on it, or internet access on it, right? But it doesn't. Just because you own a mobile phone doesn't mean anything about your data plan. Those who have unlimited data plans tend to forget how many people have very limited data plans or no data plan at all. I have recently learned it's a thing for students to carry around mobile phones that don't have data plans because they don't want to be one of those kids that doesn't have a mobile phone, right? So they just carry them around. They can't actually do much with them unless they're near Wi-Fi. So the awareness of the particulars of the problem are really important right now. The awareness that it is not just a nice to have, but it's a necessity. And right now, while we are still practicing social distancing, I think it's folly for us to think those who don't have internet will stay in their homes. If any of us are being honest, if we didn't have internet, would we stay in our homes as much as we do? Probably not. So particularly for seniors and those who need to for their health, we have to make sure they get internet at home. I don't think I've been doing this work for over 20 years, never in my previous career would I've ever said that the issue that I work on is life and death. Today, it is.
So talking about the seriousness of the current situation, I'm wondering as the Alliance looks out, are you seeing encouraging DIY solutions? You've talked about kind of networks being one of them. I'm wondering if you're noticing, given the emergency, that people are being creative in how they address either the literacy piece or the support piece. Are there areas where you think people are starting to come up with creative solutions that you're noticing?
There have been a lot of solutions that have put Wi-Fi in parking lots. Have you all heard of this? This is a thing, right? If in areas, particularly rural or low-income areas and urban and suburban areas, if there's no internet, a drive-in Wi-Fi will be set up. Sometimes it's a library parking lot, a school parking lot. Sometimes the local governments are doing it. They do it because they can't figure out the solution to get it into people's homes, and it's a lot faster. So there's a lot of DIY there. I very much appreciate that DIY. But at the same time, we have to figure out those longer term, bigger solutions. Those are probably not DIY solutions, right? They're big, and we have to wrap our heads around how we get there. And the way we do that is advocacy. We have to have the government's involvement. And the government's involved both in setting the policies that allow lots of competition. Let's bring folks in. Let's bring in more providers. Let's help providers set up. Where's that publicly owned fiber? Let's find it. Let's open it up. Let's put some more in. We have to have, because that's where that local ingenuity comes about, but they have to have the backhaul. If there's no backhaul, then, where's it coming from? So that's why that it has to be governmental intervention, and it has to happen soon. But here's what's exciting. We're seeing that. Like, those conversations are taking place all over the country, all over the world. Folks are like, oh my gosh, we have to get on this. So I don't think in any previous time have I felt this positive about the possibilities.
Well, that's encouraging to hear. So I want to open it up and see what questions we have in the chat. So Katie, are there questions that you'd like to share from the chat? Just so folks who are watching are aware, I was having trouble pulling up the questions on the chat, so thank you for your patience here. We do want to start going through. We do have many questions in the chat, so
that's great. Super.
We'll start sharing them with you. I'll wait 1 second and check in with Katie and see if there's.
Okay. Cool. I am looking now, and we've got a lot, it looks like. Okay. Access devices and tech support. Is software also still an issue?
Software is always an issue. It's not a focus of NDIAs.
Yeah.
Right. So accessibility of the software, usability of the software, those are all completely issues. And one of the reasons NDIA chose not to focus on it is because others are focusing on it. So we focused on the issue that wasn't being addressed.
Cool. Okay. Another question. We often have the issue we call loose tech energy. What can we do to direct that? Have you seen other folks be successful?
Can you define that for me, Katie?
I can hop in here. I think for loose tech energy, it's a term that we've kind of considered looking out at some of the attempts to respond that seem like maybe we can have a really good tech solution because we can build this technology and we have the technical expertise. Where I think the kind of classic example is, I think about data science, but I'm not an epidemiologist. So I create a model to inform that maybe might be more harmful than helpful. I think that that's the reference there.
I think a similar situation that I encounter a little too often is, what about an app to solve that? The digital divide cannot be solved with an app. Like, we just recently had somebody who was very well-meaning and was trying so hard. This is not an app is not going to solve this. We need infrastructure, and it's labor. It's hard labor to teach somebody how to use the internet. Even if you have an online tutorial, they're still going to have questions. And if technology is intimidating to this particular learner, which technology is very intimidating to new learners, you have to have that one-on-one because you have to build the trust.
All right.
Totally. That makes sense.
I'm seeing a few other questions here. I can appreciate the intimidation on technology too. At Shy Hack Night, we like to consider ourselves as pretty technically literate, but it's still a challenge. Piecing together different technologies under different constraints is a challenge. I'm also seeing a question around broadband. So is public broadband the best or most logical step to ensure equitable internet?
So So the term public broadband doesn't have a clear definition. Broadband that is owned by the public is a thing. But even then, the public would be a municipality, a governmental entity, some entity that is using public monies to get it up and running or to keep it maintained. That is happening in some places. I suspect we are going to see that start to happen even more because of this problem that we have, that because of the lack of competition, in most places it's a duopoly. There's two providers, usually a cable and a telecom. And that's not enough to drive the price down. So with additional providers, the price could go down. It's also important to note that when we think about affordability, there's really two aspects to affordability. There's the market rate affordability for middle income community members, and then there's a subsidized rate where that is to really help make sure that low income families can be online. And if we don't do both, we're going to leave folks out. Broadband in the US is currently a commodity. It's something that is sold. There are shareholders. Those companies are beholden to those shareholders. Unless we think we're going to take over all of those companies, which I kind of doubt we're going to go down that path, then we have to look at competition and a subsidy.
So this ties in well with the next set of questions here. I think there's a lot of interest in these regards in particular. So first, do you see infrastructure, affordability, and proficiency as things that need to happen simultaneously to achieve digital equity, or do we need to get the infrastructure in place first?
There's a great question. So some folks already have access to the infrastructure, right? Even in rural areas, they may have a little bit, they may still have a cellular connection. They might be going to the library. Well, not during COVID, post-COVID. But there are these alternative solutions. So no, we can't wait until we have infrastructure and before we go at the proficiency part of it. That needs to happen simultaneously, because as we've already discussed, it's something that you have to keep working on, and it really becomes a matter of confidence. I suspect many of the members of this group, they have the confidence. They're like, I don't know, I'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. But if you're scared of technology, you don't think you can figure it out. So that's going to take a while to get some of those folks to that point.
So earlier you mentioned how oftentimes perhaps people might think of equity issues around rural and urban, or maybe unduly one side or the other. One of our questions is, what are the differences and barriers between rural and urban communities?
So in some rural communities, not all, in some rural communities, they may have 0 providers. They may have 1 provider. In urban areas, there tends to be at least 2 providers, but here's the kicker. In some poor urban areas, the old infrastructure has not been upgraded, and they have old DSL that is sometimes less than a meg. Some of folks are only getting 768K in an urban area because the infrastructure hasn't been upgraded. So some low-income urban neighborhoods have a very similar infrastructure situation as rural, but it's not always the same. The other difference is the issue of resources and local institutions. Who's teaching digital literacy? You're going to have more folks teaching digital literacy just because of the density in an urban area than you are a rural area. There are creative solutions in rural areas that have been going on for years that involve buses that have computers in them, and they, set up at different tractor stores or libraries in order to help folks have access for a couple of hours a week. So those solutions are different because of the density.
Okay. So I want to emphasize really quick as an aside, there are a lot of questions and I'm going to try to get through as many as I can. But so thanks to folks in the chat who are submitting them. Clearly, this is an engaging and interesting topic with a lot of directions, but I'll move on to the next question, which is what is the role that internet providers have played in creating the current conditions? Are they helping or hurting digital inclusion efforts?
Okay. They're actually doing both. For real. The current environment in terms of competition, in some states, there are laws that keep public monies from being used to create competition. And in those states, those laws came about because providers made them come about, right? So that was them not helping. In the current crisis, many of the providers created free and or low cost offers, and that was definitely a big help. Was it all set up the way that I would have set it up? No. Right. Some of the providers had limitations in terms of debt. If you have bad debt with them, you're not eligible. Okay, that's not helpful, right? There were situations with a provider that they didn't connect their free offer to their low cost offer. So then when folks called in, they were being told that they would need to then sign up for the $50, $60 a month plan post free 2 months, as if it were a promotional offer. It was not a promotional offer. It was a crisis offer. So it wasn't the perfect way, but it was still valuable. Some of the providers now are very aware that we need a broadband subsidy and are engaging in those discussions with public interest groups such as NDIA and with policymakers. So we need internet service providers. Have they always done things the way that I want them to do? No, certainly not. But we have to continue working with them to make sure that we get things where we want them to go.
Thank you. Our next question is centered around cities, particularly the city of Chicago. So the question is there anything that the city of Chicago in particular is doing to attempt to resolve the issue of digital equity? And I'll also add, are there other things that you see in major cities that are worth highlighting?
So I have not seen anything from the city of Chicago. I would love to see more activity from the city of Chicago. There's a little bit of activity at the county level, but we should also be seeing something at the city level. I should have mentioned there's a bunch of resources and all this on our website, digitalinclusion.org. Side note, best $500 that we ever spent, digitalinclusion.org.
We'll through the chat as well, too.
Okay. It's very funny because we had digitalinclusionalliance.org, which your folks probably appreciate that. That was not the best name. So at digitalinclusion.org, one of the things you'll find on there on the homepage, there's a link for our trailblazers. And those trailblazers are local governments who are doing something around digital inclusion. That list was created pre-COVID, so there are actually more local governments doing things now than there were then. Separately, we have a list. So there's also a COVID link on the homepage. And in that COVID resources page, you'll see another link for local governments that are specifically doing something around COVID. Some of the things that local governments are doing have to do with funding. Are they providing money to local community-based organizations that are doing digital literacy or other digital inclusion work? Are they do they have a public Wi-Fi? Are they helping with coalition building and for folks to help talk to each other so they can build that digital inclusion ecosystem? So there's a whole list of things on that Trailblazer page. And then separately on the local page of what local governments are doing around COVID, you'll see mostly listings of public Wi-Fi, those parking lot Wi-Fi solutions. Now that we are, I wouldn't say we're past it. We're mid hair on fire, gotta have solutions right now. Like that's kind of the situation we're at now. We're working towards those longer term solutions. The longer term solutions have to be internet in the home. The idea that you're gonna sit in a parking lot and do whatever it is you need to do and then go home and be okay without internet until the next day, I can't imagine. My kids are older now, so I don't have the issue of throwing them on but I cannot imagine. Okay, everybody get in the car. Did everybody go to the bathroom before we leave? Right? You're going to get there. Somebody's going to have to pee before you even get everybody's laptops out, right? Like the idea of kids doing homework in the car in the parking lot is just insane.
I think that's a really important point to highlight, because I think a lot of times we look to some of these solutions as really maybe creative or helpful, but there's all of these aspects of making use of those solutions that become really challenging for people. The next question you've touched on a little bit, but I'll emphasize the second part of it, which is, are there unique challenges to digital equity among rural, suburban, and urban communities? If so, how to develop policies that address them all?
The one that hits them all is the affordability. If you're poor, it doesn't matter where you're poor, right? Internet, unless you happen to live in the couple of places like Ammon, Idaho, has really affordable broadband. Unless you're lucky enough to live in those couple of places that have really affordable broadband, it's a universal problem, no matter where you are. The differences really, I think, come down to where the resources are, and the resources have to do with those digital literacy entities who is providing that training, and who are the digital inclusion organizations. For example, who's refurbishing computers and making sure those computers can then get into people's homes? Entities like that don't exist everywhere. They should exist everywhere, but they don't. And the places they do exist are more likely to be urban. So that means the urban folks have the challenge of partnering with one of those entities that's in an urban area to make sure that their area is covered also. So there are solutions, and the solutions often have to do with working together. We really have to get away from this urban versus rural issue that we currently have.
Speaking of working together, are there successful private-public partnerships you've seen so far that could be developed in Illinois or Chicago around digital inclusion?
The best place to go to look for the different examples that are out there is a website called MUNI, M-U-N-I, networks.org. They're not really all municipal networks. It's an old URL, but it's very popular, so they're not giving it up. It's the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. That's the name of the nonprofit, and they keep track of who's doing what around creating their own solutions, and they have a fabulous website where it's all listed.
Awesome. We really appreciate the additional resources. We'll share them out again through our Slack channel. So hopefully folks who are in the chat, if you'd like to find those, we'll post them as well. So the next question is around education. Since education now essentially requires internet access, what policies are good models within education to ensure equity?
The policies that have to do with making sure that the families, so side note, not just the kids, please. Kids have parents. They don't live by themselves. So there are way too many programs that are like, we're just helping the kids. Please, their parents really need assistance also. So it's going at the three items, right? It is making sure that there's the right device for their needs, that there's a consistent, reliable internet. For education and for different households, that might be a wireline connection. It might be a mobile hotspot. If a family is housing insecure, or the kid is going from different household to different household, it's probably a mobile hotspot. So the solutions aren't going to be the same for every family within a district. And then there's that tech support. It's tech support for the child, and it's tech support for the adult in the household also, who is supposed to be helping them, and in fact also has their own needs that they need to take care of online, and they often can't if they don't have the skills, right? And then who do they turn to at this moment? I think that's another one for your folks, your membership to think about, is that we all have somebody we turn to. I mean, members of this group can turn to other members of the group, right? But if you're not in a household like that, then who do you turn to? So this is a problem that has been solved piecemeal in different communities by community-based organizations and libraries, but we need to go at it a lot bigger than that. Like, what's the solution for this for Chicago? Certain neighborhoods have figured out solutions, I guarantee you. But it really needs to be bigger, right? It needs to be Chicago, it needs to be Illinois, it needs to be the country. How are we making sure that everybody has somebody to turn to so that they can, because really, how do you do anything now without the internet? So you have to have somebody to turn to.
Well, some of our questions center around how do we help? Specifically, is there a call to action for individuals, ways we can contribute as, quote, already connected individuals?
Right. That's a tougher one to answer. Asking around, NDIA we know the least amount about Chicago. Ask me about any other city. I probably know something, but I know the least amount about Chicago, and which is really ironic because, again, I've been doing this stuff a long time, and Chicago used to be this like crazy active area for what we used to call then community technology centers. We now call it digital inclusion. It's the same thing. So find out, do that work, right? Find out who is providing this service now. Like, start asking around who's doing it, and then get involved in those community-based organizations. An important point in all this is trust. If the person needing help doesn't trust the person providing help, they're not going to take the help, right? So the entity's best placed to provide that assistance of helping get somebody connected to the internet, helping them find a device, and helping them with the tech support and the digital literacy is an entity that's already working with low-income populations or seniors or disabled, right? Whichever population one wants to focus in on. All three have barriers to the internet that we need to address.
Thank you. I wanted to point out one, this wasn't a question, but I think it is relevant to the conversation, which is, as a public school educator, I don't see a promising solution in terms of having students keeping the technology that was given out. There are various reasons why that may be, but I did want to point that out because there was some discussion generated around that in the chat.
Yeah, it's a very real problem. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll move on to the next few questions. I think we'll have a few more here, but thank you for providing really, really good answers to a lot of different types of questions. And I think we have a few more here. So this one, I think, is, would expanding on existing programs like Comcast Internet Essentials help lower the barriers until ultimately implementing as a public utility?
Again, I don't think we're ever going to get to a public utility. I think we're going to have some middle ground. It can't stay the way it was. That's absolutely for sure. We can't leave things the way they were before. But yes, Comcast Internet Essentials is a valuable program because it's $10 a month for their internet service. Each of the low-cost programs out there, of all of them, Comcast is the one that's most developed. It has the most eligibility. It has the fewest barriers. They do the most promotion of their own low-cost offer, which is fine. It means that more folks know about it. The other low-cost offers, those who are eligible tend not to know that they are eligible because there hasn't been enough promotion of them. In this moment, they're the best thing we have. Do I beat them over the head all the time? Oh, yes. Look at the New York Times last week. We had a great article basically beating them over the head because they're not as good as they should be. But by drawing attention to the problems with those low-cost offers is how I also open the door to say, we need a subsidy. I can't see a world where the government buys Comcast, right? And then owns Comcast. That's never going to happen. I mean, prove me wrong. That would be super. But I don't think that's going to happen. So if that doesn't happen, and we continue to have independently owned ISPs. And keep in mind, in rural areas, there's hundreds of them, not in one place, but they're tiny little mom and pop internet service providers. So most folks are served by the bigger ones, but there's a whole bunch of little ones out there too. How do we, the question I think is utilizing those low cost offers now and getting as many people signed up as we can. The one thing that folks can do, find that trusted entity in the neighborhood, help them create flyers to distribute to the folks that they already serve, to let folks know you might be eligible for discount internet, because they don't know. So like that is something that's so doable, and most places aren't doing it because they don't know that the discount internet offers are even there. So that's another one on the NDIA website. There's a big thing on the front page. This is all the stuff that we think is important, right? On the front page is the free and low cost offers. Find the ones that are in your area and do the promotions. Create the flyers yourself if you need to. Hang them up at the grocery store. Put them in food distributions.
All right, thank you. This question is about current leadership. The question is, how does current leadership at the FCC hinder attempts at advancing digital equity through government policy?
The leadership at the FCC, for the most part, this might change thanks to COVID, pre-COVID had defined the digital divide as a rural availability of infrastructure issue. So if it's available, problem solved. We know that is not at all correct. It might be available and people are not subscribing or they don't know how to use it. So we have the current administration is at the FCC. There might be some learning going on. One can hope that there's that learning going on. The policies in terms of taking away the rights of the local governments, that's also a problem. Local governments could negotiate with cable providers. So cable and telecom are regulated differently. They would negotiate with cable providers to make sure everybody in the area is served, and there would be things that the cable provider would provide back. The percentage of those community benefits has been capped. So prior to that capping, there was a city in California that negotiated a really good chunk of money for digital inclusion. It's not going to happen anymore because the FCC's capped it.
I want to point out one thing that you did reference the New York Times article. We encourage folks to check that out. We'll send that through the channel as well for those who caught that reference and were interested in learning more. I'm sure some of our community did see that as well. So we'll share that out as well. Do you have a few more questions? Time for a few more questions?
Yep.
Maybe three?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Have you seen any other countries doing a better job of getting everyone affordable access to the internet?
Certainly. You can easily look up, particularly some of the Asian countries. That is a situation where it's publicly owned. They built it themselves. Might we build some fiber that others can attach to? Possibly, yeah. In other places, it's an issue of the availability of the internet again and making that more affordable. But then also there's places like the UK that have put millions of dollars into teaching people how to use it. So they have at a national level addressed the digital literacy issue way more so than we have.
Okay. We have a question about mesh nets. What are the odds of leveraging mesh nets to compete with the providers who are hurting these efforts and bring broader access to broadband? Is this something being discussed in policy circles?
Less so in policy circles, I think. Yes, that is a very real solution. Some of the mesh networks don't get into people's homes. Those that do are the ones we want to replicate. So policy-wise, it is making sure that funding that will be identified, because there is likely to be funding for broadband infrastructure, more funding to be identified because it is a bipartisan issue. The policy issue that we need to get into is making sure that that funding is not limited, that mesh networks, for example, that they should be eligible for that funding. This is also something that you all can look at in terms of state funding. You do have state funding for broadband in Illinois. I don't know what the limitations are of that. Who is eligible for that funding? Might mesh networks get access to some of that funding? If the answer is no currently, might the policy be changed?
Okay. So I think so I'll say if anyone has any last minute questions, now would be the time to send them through the chat. I'll ask one while we wait to see if there's any outstanding questions. But I'm wondering, so as we consider the landscape looking forward, what are you most hopeful about, or what do you think is the opportunity in this time?
I'm most hopeful about the solutions, that the arguments about why seem to have, for the most part, been taken care of thanks to COVID. There's weird things that the virus has actually done for us, right? And I think that's one of them. I am hopeful that there's more funding out there, and not just from the government, but from philanthropy and corporate donations for the local efforts that are helping folks learn how to use the internet. That's definitely, like, I'm seeing it now. Whether or not it continues post-crisis, we'll see, right? I should also mention NDIA has an active listserv. It's very community focused. So those who would like to join the NDIA community, there's a join button. The affiliates are entities, are organizations, but then there's also friends, individuals can join in order to participate in the community's conversations. And that's where you'll see a lot of great ideas come through.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. We'll ask one more question because it looks like I missed one in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and close things for the evening. Bear with me as I scroll and try to find the question really quick. So I'm looking down at my phone as I scroll here. So give me 1 second.
Did someone point out, you missed one, you missed one?
I'm not sure if I understand it quickly, but I'll pose it and see if.
Okay.
So has the Alliance looked at government not being able to compete with private entities?
So in some states, they can't compete. In other states, there's no laws against it. So it's definitely an issue of knowing what the laws are on your state, which you can see at muninetworks.org. Also, Pew Trust has put together a broadband policy toolkit for states. And so you can actually, it's quite sweet. You can go into there, it's Pew Trust, not Pew Internet, in Pew Trust website, and you can actually find the language that limits those broadband networks.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Well, you've provided a lot of really excellent resources to folks who want to learn more or be involved in other ways. So we first want to thank you for presenting and answering many questions around this really interesting topic. So thank you for your time. And
thank you for having me. This is great. Those are really super questions.
Awesome. We're glad to hear that. So I'll pause for a second, and for folks who are still on the live stream, just give you some kind of next steps here. So as I mentioned, we'll send the links that were mentioned through our Slack, but if you want to join us for our breakout groups, please join us on Slack. Folks who are working on civic tech projects will share those projects, and if you want to propose one, you can also do that through Slack. And I'll pause here and see, Katie, am I missing anything? I think
No?
we covered it, but I think if there's nothing, is that it?
I think that's about it. I think you've hit all the bases there.
Okay. So with that, we'll go ahead and say, go
Go forth and
hack.
hack.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see some of you on Slack. Otherwise, this broadcast will be available after the fact on YouTube. Thanks again. Bye.
Thank you.
You know?